front gradually edging its way southeastwards across the country. That will bring a band of thicker cloud and some patchy outbreaks of mainly light rain and drizzle. A few brighter spells ahead of it, but clearer conditions following on behind and turning a little bit cooler than it has been, particularly across parts of Scotland. High pressure remains with us into next week, with further frost and fog, but becoming increasingly breezy.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Good evening, I'm Alastair Stewart. Coming up on the show, infamy, they've all got it in for me. Is there a concerted effort to get rid of the Prime Minister, or is he doing just fine on his own? As Labour in Wales say they are on their way to lifting COVID restrictions, why do the Welsh Tories object? I'll be asking their leader. And could space be a nice little earner for the UK as the search for life moves up a gear? All of that coming up, but first let's bring you a full news update with Polly Middlehurst.
Good evening, I'm Polly Middlehurst with the news for you at 8 o'clock. The former Director General of the government's COVID task force, Kate Josephs, has apologised for holding leaving drinks in December 2020 when indoor socialising was banned. It comes after it emerged two parties were held the day before the Duke of Edinburgh's funeral in May. Downing Street has apologised, saying it was deeply regrettable that they took place at a time of national mourning. Restrictions meant the Queen had to sit alone for her husband's funeral the following day. Virginia Giuffre says she's pleased a judge has ruled her civil sex abuse case against the Duke of York can go ahead. Ms Giuffre says she wants to expose the truth. Prince Andrew denies all the allegations against him. It's after the Duke was stripped of his royal patronages and military titles. GB News can confirm more than 550 migrants have crossed the English Channel in small boats in the first 2 weeks of this year. 4 boats with around 100 migrants have been intercepted so far today. It comes as French authorities investigate the death of a Sudanese man in his 20s who drowned after his small boat got into difficulties earlier today near Boulogne. Police in Ireland say they've made significant progress in the investigation of the murder of 23-year-old teacher Aisling Murphy. Thousands gathered at vigils across Ireland, including the Taoiseach Micheál Martin in Dublin, to remember Aisling. She was found dead on Wednesday after going for a run at Tullamore, County Offaly. Ireland's Deputy Premier, Leo Varadkar, says the country is in shock.
Does cause us to think a little bit more about gender-based violence, and this is something that men and women alike need to combat together. And I think for men in particular, we need to make sure that we understand and that we teach our boys that violence against women is never justified.
Leo Varadkar. An Australian court has ordered Novak Djokovic to be detained from 8 a.m. local time tomorrow, ahead of the first Grand Slam of the year, which starts on Monday. He will now, however, be allowed to attend his lawyer's offices to prepare his case. It follows a government decision to revoke his visa for a second time, saying it was in the public interest. Andy Murray says it's unfortunate Djokovic has ended up in this situation, but encourages people to get vaccinated. And the first female officer to command the Army's #1 training regiment is taking over the job from her husband. 42-year-old Lieutenant Colonel Lindsay Kelly will be leading 165 members of staff at the Army Training Centre in Pirbright in Surrey. She assumes command from husband Seamus, who plans to continue working in the regiment's headquarters. Good luck to her. On DAB Plus Radio, on TV and online, you're with GB News.
Today's front pages are dominated by the Duke of York being reduced to the ranks by his mother. Phew, I'm sure they said in Number 10. Well, not really, because inside those newspapers, reams and reams of the PM's problems continue, and in a clever juxtaposition, many contrast the sad and solitary figure of Her Majesty at her husband's funeral the day after. Two parties were raging at Number 10 with a disco and a suitcase full of booze. Now, the PM wasn't there, but he attended another, and that's already been acknowledged. None of it helps, but is any of it terminal? And are the Duke and the Downing Street staffers' antics one of the most important issues on people's minds? Boris Johnson appears to have lied, dissembled and blamed others while admitting that he did attend a party that many had seen as being illegal. The excuses and the explanations are rich and nuanced, from Number 10 being exempt as a Crown property and moot debates over what constitutes a work gathering. It won't wash. But to many ordinary folk, it really isn't the burning issue of the day. As Christine Milstead observed on Twitter, sleaze, sleaze and more sleaze. When is the media going to wake up and report on important news which could have a great impact on us all? Fuel prices, taxation, children's education, Chinese interference, influence, Russia mounting troops on the Ukrainian border, to name but a few. She's not alone. Others suggest that there is a media conspiracy against the Prime Minister, determined to oust him for having done Brexit and to oust his party from government, because many of them deep down hanker for a Labour government or perhaps a Labour Liberal Democrat coalition. Teresa observes on Twitter, the BBC's decided to remove the Prime Minister. They are using your licence fee to do this. I didn't vote for the Conservatives, but I believe in democracy, and that is the electorate's job to remove a PM, not the left-wing media's. Well, many seem to agree with her, and many more say it isn't just the BBC. To be clear, the Prime Minister is in trouble, and he could be ousted by his own party in a pretty simple process. But is there an appetite in the party for that yet? Secret letters are said to have gone to the chairman of the 1922 committee. He needs to receive over 50 to trigger a leadership election. So far, fewer than 10 have gone public. Fraser Nelson suggests in The Telegraph they won't move until a likely winner comes forward. He also demonstrates, with much experience of these matters, no presumed candidate is the complete deal yet. In another twist of how the media works, the Times newspaper appears to have an exclusive leak of what senior civil servant Sue Gray will conclude about all those Number 10 shenanigans and the PM's walk-on part in them. The Times political editor, Stephen Swinford, writes, Sue Gray's inquiry is not expected to find evidence of criminality over Number 10 parties, but she is considering censuring the Prime Minister for his lack of judgment. She will castigate the number 10 drinking culture and predicts aides and officials will face disciplinary proceedings. Now, of course, he may be right, he may be wrong, but I'll tell you this, he's very good, and no one's denied it yet. It would be a conclusion that gave the Prime Minister a little more time to put himself in the clear. Finally, Labour, up to their eyeballs in the China spy story, fielded Emily Thornberry to say of the Prime Minister, and I quote, "It's the lying, the manipulation, the treating us all as fools that hurt." On that, she may well have a point. But I also sense, however, that the public are saying much the same about sections of the media, especially on the manipulation and treating us as fools bit. Several people have known all along what happened in Downing Street during lockdown and other phases of restriction, not least Dominic Cummings, that it has dripped out according to what looks like a coordinated, strategically planned grid to a fine lineup of willing media friends is, at best, odd. So, are we led by a fool who has to go, or are we being played as fools by a media that certainly wants him to go? In truth, are you more worried about the economy, energy prices, interest rates and the threat of our security and peace abroad? And wouldn't you just like to see an end to all the COVID restrictions as soon as possible? I'm just asking, and it's all on the show tonight. And let's get underway by welcoming Nigel Nelson, the longest-serving political editor in print to the programme, currently political editor for the Sunday Mirror and The People. Very good of you to join us and nice to see you. As I said at the top of that monologue, this morning's front pages were 8-1, Duke of York over Boris Johnson and the parties. Is that because the Duke of York is new as a story or more important than the Prime Minister? If you can still, you may be on mute. Can you just try and trickle? Have another go.
Can you hear me now?
I can. I beg your pardon. Well done for sorting out. So people know where we're going. My first question was, is that 8-1 result on front pages because the development in the Duke of York story were more important than the Prime Minister? As you will know at home, and as I'm sure Nigel knows, that isn't working for some reason. I tell you what we're going to do. We're going to put that on pause for a moment, and we're going to make sure that it can work, because I know that you will want to hear precisely what one of Fleet Street's finest has to say about the Duke of York, about the Prime Minister, and indeed about how the Prime Minister may make moves on COVID, which could perhaps change the political landscape. But I'm not going to try for a third time. We're going to move on now and indeed turn specifically to one of those hot topics, COVID. And there's been a dramatic development in Wales. The First Minister, Mark Drakeford, has said that most restrictions in Wales will be lifted over the next 2 weeks if COVID cases continue to fall. If all goes well, he says, Wales will be at alert level 0 by early to mid-February. Now, the leader of the Conservatives in Wales, Andrew R.T. Davies, says, quotes, Labour have got it wrong, and there he is. Why don't you welcome the lifting of restrictions?
Well, good evening, Alastair. I do welcome the lifting of restrictions, but it was only on Tuesday at our equivalent of PMQs, which is known as First Minister's Questions, that the First Minister was telling me we're in the eye of the storm and we've got another 10 days to go till the peak before we can consider lifting restrictions. 48 hours later, he's lifting restrictions that he himself imposed and have been so devastating to businesses here in Wales. And so it's the messaging that obviously the First Minister has been putting out over the last 6 to 7 weeks that has caused confusion, caused real harm to businesses and people's livelihoods, the length and breadth of Wales, that I take issue with. But I do welcome that we do now have a roadmap out of restrictions here in Wales. I just wish it was a quicker roadmap, because we still have to wait some 2 weeks before all the restrictions are lifted.
But in a sense, doesn't that timetable, Saturday, numbers allowed to attend outdoor events rising from 50 to 500, all the way through to working home, no longer a legal requirement, and finally getting back to alert level 0 by the 10th of February, that answers both your points. It's a good thing, and it is done over a steady and sensible period of time.
Well, as I said, I welcome the roadmap out of restrictions, albeit it's come very late in the day. But if I use an example on Boxing Day, for example, Chepstow, which many of your viewers would know is on the English-Wales border and just a few miles away from Bristol, ran the Welsh Grand National, which is an annual fixture at the racecourse, behind closed doors. And just across the Severn, sporting events were going on with spectators filling the stands and enjoying the Boxing Day festivities. This is the damage that's being done to Welsh businesses the length and breadth of Wales, and it hasn't been based on the science that obviously the First Minister has been saying he's referring to every time he puts another restriction in place. We've got to learn to live with COVID. We can't carry on reaching for the toolbox of restrictions every time a new variant comes along, because not only is it economically very damaging from people's mental health point of view, it is also devastating for that point as well. And so what I'm saying is, yes, welcome the roadmap out, which is what I've been calling for the last couple of weeks. Wonder what the First Minister's been doing when he's been saying in one breath only 48 hours ago we're in the eye of the storm, and 48 hours later he's lifting the restrictions that he was only saying a few days prior he couldn't do. The First Minister really does need to get a grip and start moving things forward quickly here in Wales so that we can catch up with other parts of the United Kingdom.
Is this exactly what you'd like to see Boris Johnson do for the whole of the United Kingdom, or certainly for England, and follow, as it were, the leadership of Wales?
Well, it's not the leadership of Wales at all, because obviously we've had far more draconian restrictions here in Wales than other parts of the United Kingdom. In England, for example, there was no level 2 implementation of restrictions. And obviously Scotland and Northern Ireland took their own view as well. But it is a fact that we have the highest death rate of any part of the United Kingdom, regrettably, here in Wales. And we've had some of the highest infection rates of any part of the United Kingdom and indeed Europe. And yet we have a First Minister who's imposed some of the stiffest restrictions possible. And when the COVID pass system was introduced here in October, we were told that that would prevent us going into restrictions, whilst the venues that had to have the COVID pass were the first to be penalised under the restrictions that were brought in by the First Minister in December.
But the Prime Minister needs to do something pretty dramatic, doesn't he? As I said in my monologue, whether it's COVID or whether it's relationships with the palace and partying, he is in deep doo-doo. COVID may be a way forward. How desperate as a Conservative are you that he does something positive?
Well, it's really important that the government of the day, whatever colour that government is, and in this case we're talking about a Conservative government, is able to get on with the business it's been mandated to, which is deliver its manifesto and its manifesto commitments. It only has a 5-year term to do that, and every day wasted on things that have been going on over the last couple of weeks is a day wasted delivering on your priorities. And so I very much hope that the government can steady the ship and actually move forward with the exciting manifesto commitments that the country endorsed in the 2019 election and gave him a majority of nearly 80 seats in the House of Commons.
Do you think he's up to it? Because your opposite number in Scotland doesn't think so.
Well, as I've said in the last couple of days of interviews I've been doing, I do support the Prime Minister. I do want to see the review from the civil servant come forward and obviously put all the evidence on the table so we can understand exactly what has gone on here. The Prime Minister is committed to obviously going to the House of Commons and be questioned on the findings of that review. But it is for the Prime Minister to look into the mirror each morning and ask 3 questions of himself. Can he command the majority within the party in the Houses of Commons? Can he command a majority of the House of Commons itself so he can govern? And more importantly, can he command a majority when it comes to an election so that we can secure a future Conservative government at the next general election? And those are 3 of the constituencies that he has to deal with. And if obviously one of those questions comes back as no, that is a real serious issue for the Prime Minister to have to overcome. And obviously the party will take a view of that.
You're an experienced politician. My final question is to seek your view on one of my main themes. And it's really a reflection of what people are saying to us here at GB News and we're seeing on social media and in other emails, that they sense that there is a media conspiracy, still cross about Brexit, still cross about all sorts of other things and more favourable towards the Labour Party, that is behind many of the moves to get rid of him. Do you sense that, or is that just a defensive conspiracy theory?
Well, it is a fact that obviously Boris Johnson does polarise opinions because of the Brexit debate and discussion. But it is a fact that he has delivered on Brexit. He has delivered a strong economic platform with record growth and record employment rates. He has a reformist agenda. If we can get back to delivering on our manifesto that was endorsed by the people in 2019, and what we've got to do, and what the Prime Minister in particular has got to do, is take control of the situation and actually move forward, rather than obviously day after day, drip after drip coming out in the media, distracting from the really important work in hand, which is what all politicians should be focused on, which is improving the lives of the people of this great country of ours, whether that's in England, Scotland, Wales or Northern Ireland.
Andrew Arty-Davies, always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed for your time this Friday evening. That's Andrew Arty-Davies, they're the leader of the Conservative Party in Wales. I am hoping that the gremlins have been sought out and have been defenestrated. And I'm going to take a deep breath and go back now to the Sunday Mirror and Sunday People political editor, Nigel Nelson. Can you hear me, sir?
Alastair, I can hear you perfectly. Can you hear me?
I can. This is a perfect start. Or take two. I was saying about 10 minutes ago, before we spoke to Andrew Arty-Davies, this morning's front pages were 8-1 Duke of York over Boris Johnson. Is that simply because the Duke of York is a news story, or is it because he's now become more important than the Prime Minister?
No, because it's a new story. I mean, it was an extraordinary move to strip him of his royal title, of his military titles. So that's why that led all the papers this morning. I mean, Partygate has been going on now since last month. So yet another party isn't as big a story or as new a story as what happened to Prince Andrew.
OK, I accept that. So despite that pause for what is a better breaking story to lead the papers, do you accept the principal charge that there is a collective desire in the media to get rid of Boris Johnson?
No, I don't at all. I mean, if you're looking for my personal view and that of the Sunday Mirrors, we would like to see Boris Johnson gone, but then we think that Keir Starmer would make a better Prime Minister. But this is not a conspiracy, because we didn't organise the parties. These are the revelations are coming out as a drip by drip. There's some new ones tonight on the Mirror website, for instance, that they held one every Friday. Even brought a wine chiller in so the booze could be cooled. Now, these are things that are happening in Downing Street. It's not something that the media has created. What we're doing is we're reporting on what is going on.
But you know, I was going to say you know as well as I do, actually know better than I do, that all of that stuff was known by the people who were there, or the people who were there and have now left. And the drip feed of it is almost like a grid ahead of a general election. The end game is to get rid of Boris, and they'll drip this bit, they'll drip this bit. When Dominic Cummings gave evidence to the Science and Health Committee, he knew all of this and didn't breathe a word of it. It is a conspiracy.
Well, it's absolutely true that Dominic Cummings did know about it, and it's also true that he's been putting out a great deal of the information about these parties. But that's Dominic Cummings seeking revenge on the Prime Minister for getting rid of him. So that's a matter really for Dominic Cummings. I don't think that then translates into some kind of media conspiracy. Certainly we're using Dominic Cummings as a source, but it doesn't mean we're creating it.
It might be a big test of sources, though, isn't it? Because the great defence in my trade and yours, when we've got a real Bobby Dazzler, is to protect it with sources. You've just said, yes, we are using Dominic Cummings as a source. 9 times out of 10, whether it's my dear friend Paul Brand on ITV News saying, oh, well, you know, we have a source that has given us this, whether it was the Allegra Stratton one or the latest one on the invitation email. Sources are always protected. It would be a better world of journalism if they were blurted out, as you've just been good enough to do.
Well, I'm not blurting it out. It was Dominic Cummings who did that. I protect my sources with my life. And certainly somebody whose name did not want it revealed, I wouldn't reveal it. Dominic Cummings has been putting this information out on his blog posts. If you pay £10 a month, you can sign up to it and anyone can see exactly what I'm saying.
What do you make of the Telegraph, Boris Johnson's old bolt hole, and according to Mr Cummings, who we've just been discussing, his true boss, as he once asserted, now turning against him as well? I mean, when the press as one takes against a party leader and that party, it's fatal, isn't it?
No, I mean, I don't think that's fair to the Telegraph. I don't think the Telegraph is any less conservative today than it was, say, a week ago. What happened this morning was the Telegraph had a good story. They chose to run that story. Parties have been the story basically of the year, ever since the year started. They had a new line on it, so they ran it on their front page. I don't find anything extraordinary about that. And certainly, I don't think that is a political thing. That is something the Telegraph did because they had a damn good tale to tell.
Yeah. Many are also saying in comments about elections and who elected him and what mandate he's got as we look at him downcast there in the House of Commons. People are saying we'll be the judges of how good or bad he is. It's not for the newspapers to tell us. That is hardly democratic. We'll decide at an election, whether it's in May for the local councils or the general election when eventually it comes. I mean, they've got a point there, haven't they?
Absolutely, that's absolutely right. It's down to the voters to decide who governs this country. But we don't have a presidential system in this country. What voters voted for in 2019 was a conservative government. If Boris Johnson goes, there will still be a conservative government until the next general election. And at the next general election, the voters can decide whether they want to continue with the Conservatives or put somebody else in power. So that's the way our system works, that we're not voting for a person, we're voting for a party, and that party will not change whatever happens to Boris Johnson.
And finally, talking of parties, the other thing that has cropped up and I've been seeing a huge amount of were the revelations, the warning from MI5 that the Chinese were seeking to influence public affairs via Parliament, and that one Labour MP, Barry Gardiner, had taken a huge amount of money to fund his office, put his hand up to it. Lib Dems had taken some. There were pictures also, to be fair, of Cameron and May also shaking hands with this woman. That wasn't on any of the front pages, and in quite a lot of the newspapers, almost downplayed. Is that because Labour and Liberals were in the frame rather than predominantly Tories?
No, I don't think at all. I mean, that if you look at this morning's papers, there was an awful lot of coverage about the so-called Chinese spy. There were 2 pages of it in the Daily Mail. There was a full page of it in the Daily Mirror. It's not been downplayed at all. I shall be writing about it in the Sunday Mirror on Sunday. It is an important story, but like all things, news depends on what happens and the magnitude of it. And at the moment, the future of our Prime Minister is more important than a Chinese spy who may or may not have done a certain amount of damage. So again, the news judgments are based on what is actually most important. And at the moment, I think the future of the Prime Minister is the most important issue.
Do you sense, finally, and as I implied in a tweet that I put out there as well, the real concern is that the Prime Minister may be appearing because of the parties and what have you, not to have the leadership qualities that are required for dealing with things like China, for dealing with things like the Russians massing their troops on the borders of Ukraine and backing Liz Truss in trying to get Northern Ireland finally done? That's what people in the general public are most deeply concerned, whether we've got the right person at the helm.
Yeah, and I think that's the decision that Conservative MPs will have to make. I mean, you have to look at the way he's handled this particular issue. This week he apologises. What he should have done was apologise last month when the revelations first started appearing. and not just apologise, but come clean about what had happened. Maybe then he wouldn't be in the fix that he is at the moment. But he didn't do that. And that's why Conservative MPs are so frustrated. They see the electoral damage and the continuing electoral damage he is doing. And that's why they're thinking very seriously now about finding somebody else to lead them.
Watch this space, and I shall also be looking out for your column on China come Sunday. Nigel Nelson, always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed for your time there. Nigel Nelson, their political editor of the Sunday Mirror and the Sunday People. As he said very honestly, they are using their sources. Of course they are. Cummings named himself, and he at least put his hand up and said they would prefer to have a Labour government. But I thought that was an enlightening conversation about how the whole system works. After the break, we'll be returning to the Duke of York story and speaking to royal expert Ingrid Seward after Boris Johnson's office has apologised to Her Majesty the Queen for those parties in Downing Street the day before the Duke of Edinburgh's funeral. Do stay with us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Welcome back. Let's return to COVID and check in on the front line from Birmingham. Kishan Badalia is a doctor who works in A&E, and he joins me now. Great to see you again. Thank you very much indeed for coming on board. Wales is the first to blink. The Tories say it's a little bit premature, but let's get on with it. Mr Drakeford, the First Minister, says it's wise and considered. I know you're in Birmingham, but you're not that far away. How does that feel to you as a judgment call for Wales?
Oh, well, all I can speak about is my experiences in Birmingham, because obviously situations in every hospital and in every area are completely different. Ultimately, going forward, we will have to live to learn to live with COVID as part of society. It's not going anywhere, but we will have to adapt and follow appropriate measures depending on what stats are telling us, cases and admissions and those in the intensive care units.
Sure, completely accept that. And interestingly enough, both the First Minister and just now the leader of the Tories in Wales said exactly that. We've got to learn to live with it. How close then, cutting to your front line in Birmingham, how close are you to feeling that you're actually winning now, or even won, and ready to say, OK, restrictions off, let's learn to live with it?
Yep. I definitely think we're taking the right steps in the right direction. This time last year, I was feeling incredibly overwhelmed. I'd been redeployed to the intensive care unit from my normal day job, where I was working night shifts in the high dependence unit, where we had patients with the face masks on keeping their airways open. It was a very, very difficult time. And we were under a lot of pressure seeing patients with very serious symptoms of COVID-19. This year, my current experience where I'm working in A&E is we are seeing fewer patients, but the ones that we are seeing tend to be those who are unvaccinated, and those are the ones who are most unwell. The strain that I'm concerned about right now really is NHS staff going off sick, because it means that all of a sudden we don't know how many doctors or nurses we'll have on the emergency department floor to look after the patients who might come in.
Where is the real challenge then on vaccinations? Because I read the data like everybody else. Putting it quite bluntly, is it still the youngsters?
Yes, so right now, my experience is that those who are younger, particularly in the 18 to 34 bracket, who are unvaccinated, are the patients coming in. At the start of the pandemic, yes, it was predominantly older patients who I was seeing, but as time has gone on, it's the youngsters.
And I mean, despite utterly pointless in my saying it, because here I am in my suit and I'm a mere television presenter. There you are in your blues, scrubbed up, ready to get back to work. I mean, how many more times do you have to say it? You must feel incredibly frustrated.
Well, my mission is just to keep pushing the correct message out there. I appreciate, as somebody who's 27 in that younger age bracket, that there is so much misinformation on social media all over the place. We're overwhelmed, and at times it makes it difficult to know what decision to make with regards to the vaccine. So as a doctor in that age group, I feel it's my responsibility to deliver that message and reassure people that getting those jabs and your booster is the right thing to do to protect yourself, but also the people around you, preventing admissions and even dying. That is happening to people who are young.
Just shifting on, only because time is slightly against us, as you made clear at the beginning of the conversation, your area of specialty is accident and emergency. Two specific questions on that. Are ambulances getting there and being able to deliver their patients still a problem because of overcrowding in the hospitals? And secondly, are you still seeing people who frankly should be going to see their GP instead? So ambulances first.
With regards to ambulances, this really is a day-by-day situation. I know last week, and actually more so during the Christmas period, we were incredibly overwhelmed. We had a backlog of patients because there were less staff on our hospital floor being able to see patients. Now, with the wards are full. I work across a couple of different hospital trusts, and the wards are full. So there are delays from getting patients from A&E to the various wards in the hospital. Now, even outside of a pandemic, it's challenging to get patients from A&E to the wards because we're always under pressure. But my concern right now is the fact that NHS staff going off sick means that those patients who are waiting have less support from NHS staff around them. So this is my main worry at the moment.
Yeah. And on GP referrals?
Well, again, it's a mix. It fluctuates from day to day. We do see patients who could go and see their GPs who do come in. But from my experience, say this week, I was in A&E this week, the cases I saw were quite serious.
Yeah. You're like us, we're in journalism, we all chat to each other and exchange stories. You're an A&E man, but you must be talking to men and women you work with in other areas of specialty, whether it's the oncologist in cancer or whether it's the bone specialist. How haunted are they, not by beds that are full, but by the sheer challenge and scale of waiting lists? Because those numbers are now so great, if you look at them, you might think, actually, this has now become impossible.
Yeah, that's right. To put it simply, it's quite overwhelming. And as doctors, our priority are the patients. So we know that we're going to take longer to see these patients who do need to be seen. And yeah, we are feeling the pressures of it. NHS staff going off sick is causing a lot of problems right now across the board, meaning that it's even slower to see those patients, but also meaning that doctors who are more junior are having to step up into more senior roles. So, for example, one of my friends this evening works in obstetrics and gynecology. She's on call, but one of her seniors is off sick, so now she's essentially covering two roles.
And are the bulk of those sicknesses because of COVID?
It's a mix. It really is a mix. yesterday in A&E for me, talking about a complete shift, I didn't see any patients with COVID, but I know a couple of my colleagues did. That's reassuring. But that doesn't mean that tomorrow or even today we're not going to see an influx of patients. It's so unpredictable.
Yeah, I meant more your colleagues going off sick. Is that because of the pressure of the work, or is it because there are still some who've got COVID symptoms and have to self-isolate or whatever?
Yeah, it's largely actually the self-isolation period. That's the majority of it. But having said that, there are patients, there are nurses and doctors going off sick because of sort of the mental strain they've been put under and burnouts. It's a real issue.
Yeah. Given that, and it's an intriguing medical fact, bearing in mind the fact that come April, it may now be dropped, and Sajid Javid is reported tonight as hinting that it may be dropped, but if that mandate comes in that you have to have been double vaxxed and boosted to work for the NHS, what you've just said seems to make that irrelevant and almost an imposition.
Well, obviously that's a decision for the politicians based on the evidence that they have from across the country. We know that the vaccines and the boosters do prevent your risk or reduce your risk of catching the virus, spreading it on, so you'll spread it to fewer colleagues or to fewer patients, and the chance of admission and dying is much lower. So as a doctor myself, my view would be to get the vaccine, because that's the one thing that's going to protect us and help us get past this pandemic.
But even if you've been treble jabbed, you can still get the old ping, or you can do the lateral flow test and it can go the wrong way, because both are not the most watertight and accurate of measures. I mean, I'm just feeling it's a huge imposition for what is looking like a decreasing benefit.
It's a very interesting point you make there. My view is that if you are at risk of having symptoms of COVID, you should self-isolate, because there are vulnerable people out there, and we do need to learn to live with COVID as part of our society. So it's our individual responsibilities to do those tests. If we're positive, we should stay at home if possible. Or if we're out in public, wear your face mask, socially distance, take all precautions you possibly can around vulnerable people, because we're still not past it yet. There's still a lot more learning we have to do, and things aren't quite where we want them right now.
Yeah, but you did say at the very beginning that they are getting better, and you think we may be getting towards that point. Final question, and it's a cheeky one. You said, there you are, you're in your mid-20s doing a brilliant job for all of us in A&E up in Birmingham. But hey, it ain't what it looked like when you went into training all those years ago, and when you signed up as a junior doctor and now wherever you are. People leaving the profession is another problem. Are you still absolutely 100% committed to sticking with it?
Well, I love medicine, and I've dedicated my whole life to becoming a doctor. For me, the reasons I want to become a doctor are because I love helping people. I love applying the knowledge that I've learned over a long period of time, and that idea of lifelong learning. It's one of the few careers where you can do that. And that is something that drives me to be a doctor every single day. Yes, it's been incredibly difficult physically and emotionally challenging at times, and the workload has been ridiculously high. And yeah, at times I think, is this what I was expecting? The truth is, no, it wasn't what I was expecting, but still I want to be a doctor because I want to be that person there for the patients.
Kishan Badalia, can I say thank you for finding time for us on GB News tonight, but also on behalf of everybody, not least those good souls in Birmingham. Thank you for that conclusion and for your commitment and for your hard work. And you take care of yourself as well. Thank you very much indeed, Doctor.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Thank you.
God, what a brilliant young man. We are blessed, we are lucky, and he is duplicated up and down the country, men and women who give up 7 years to train to be in our service, come thick or thin, and they're still at it. We all owe them a huge thanks. We're going to return now to the Duke of York, or Andrew Windsor, as he may soon become the way things are going. Once a New York judge decided that the charges against him, which he of course vehemently denies would be heard in court, the game was up. Her Majesty the Queen told him so. No HRH, no regimental connections, all of it gone. Constitutionally, it was significant. Personally, it must have been desperately painful. But for the firm, it was business. To discuss it all, I'm delighted now to be joined by my dear friend Ingrid Stewart, who is the editor of Majesty magazine. Hi, how you doing?
I'm very well, thank you, Alastair. What a humbling person that doctor was.
I couldn't agree with you more. And little ad lib there. I mean, it's so nice to be able to say that. But there he is, mid-20s, just extraordinary. How lucky we are. Now, back to perhaps slightly less agreeable things. First things first, yes. The news this evening. Number 10 Downing Street apologising to Her Majesty the Queen, Buckingham Palace, for those parties on the eve of the Duke of Edinburgh's funeral. Rare or unique?
Rare rather than unique. I think people feel that everything that Number 10 Downing Street, which obviously includes our Prime Minister, does at the moment, it's an apology for something that should never have happened. And, you know, the Queen is our head of state. Forget that she's, you know, Her Majesty the Queen, she's our head of state. And perhaps somebody should have thought, well, this isn't a very good idea. You know, Prince Philip, who has actually held everything together by being at her side for 70 years. It's his funeral tomorrow. Let's not have drinks in the garden or wherever they were. Let's not do it tonight. I just find that I think people just think it's just nothing seems to be thought through. So if our Prime Minister doesn't think that through, what else doesn't he think through? I think it's just such a smirch on his character, although he may not have even known about it, but he's always apologising. And it's not the first time he's had to apologise for the Queen.
And what I find equally extraordinary is, and you've just hinted at it there, is reading all of the coverage of it. You know, he's actually apologising for something that he didn't attend himself, but by implication, it almost implies that it happened under his leadership, under his good offices. It was his home and what have you. I think he's making a more profound admission than perhaps he realises.
Yes, I think we just think that he's not in control. He doesn't seem to be in control of his staff. He doesn't seem to be in control of his life, because he's constantly apologising for things that he may or may not have done himself. But why does he have to be so apologetic? Why does he just not think before things happen? I honestly feel that the Queen, who has lots of likes and dislikes amongst her prime ministers, but they're kept very private, and I can't help but feel that she must think this man's an absolute idiot.
What will the next face-to-face audience be like?
Well, the Queen is forever polite, as you know, Alastair. She would never let on that she had anything against him, but I think she would be crisp. I can imagine her being, yes, good evening, Mr. Johnson, or good evening, Prime Minister, she would say. But she's probably speaking to him on Zoom anyway. But this would be their next meeting, which would probably be next Tuesday over Zoom. And I mean, the Queen lets it know in a sort of rather acerbic way when she's not very happy about something.
Absolutely. Absolutely spot on. You will have heard, I mean, maybe even from the same sources as me, that over the prorogation argument that went all the way up to the Supreme Court because of what the rogue bit means in the middle of prorogation. I mean, la reine la volte, the legislation, and the Parliament goes down because she has so decreed it. She was seething about that one.
Yes, she certainly was. And so that was a very big blot on Boris's landscape. But I remember, and I have to tell you this story because it makes me laugh, Alastair. Tony Blair was probably not one of her favourites. And he was discussing with her. And he said to her, Your Majesty, what about the Golden Jubilee? And she looked at him and she said, My Golden Jubilee, Mr. Blair. And that sort of says it all. I mean, she has this wonderful acerbic put down, but without being rude.
No.
And I feel that Boris Johnson could be well in for a bit of that.
Yeah. OK, final one and a quick one, Ingrid. And we began on it. Andrew, Duke of York. That would have been deeply painful for her as well. But my throwaway line was, but for the firm, it's business.
It's business as usual. Everything has to go on. The story had to come out. I don't think for one moment that Prince Andrew will lose his title, Duke of York, because we have to remember that Fergie, his ex-wife, is Sarah, the Duchess of York. But then if that title was taken away from him, she'd be Princess Sarah, or Sarah, Princess of York. She'd be Princess Sarah, I believe. So in the same way that Meghan and Harry, if they weren't Duke and Duchess of Sussex, she would be Princess, or she'd be like a Princess Harry of Princess Harry. She would be Princess Harry, much in the same way that Princess Michael of Kent. So she would be Princess Harry Wales. So I don't think anyone would be looking forward to that. So it's really better that these titles are kept intact and within the Queen's gift.
All right. Ingrid, always a pleasure to talk to you, not only for your company, but also for your grasp of all of these matters. Thank you very much indeed. Look forward to seeing you very, very soon. Ingrid Stewart, a good friend of mine and the editor of Majesty magazine. After the break, we'll be looking at whether space could be a nice little earner for the UK.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farrar, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Welcome back and blast off for the last 10 minutes of the programme. Today, the UK Space Agency announced it's investing £25 million towards the European Space Agency's mission to find Earth-like planets. The mission, which is named Planetary Transits and Oscillations of Stars, is looking to discover habitable planets within its myriad of telescopes and cameras. The mission will look for planets with a, quote, habitable zone that mirrors Earth-sized planets orbiting a star just like our very own sun. Excited? I couldn't be more so. And I'm delighted to be joined by scientist and writer Dr. David Whitehouse. Let me quote to you, David, from the government press statement, which is surprisingly excitable for the government. The mission offers the exciting potential for a rocky planet with life signatures to be detected using innovative sensors, electronics and software developed in the UK on a mission with UK science leadership. We are looking for life, and it's got UK written all over it.
Well, it's certainly very exciting, and Britain is playing an important role in the Plato mission, because one of the forefronts of astronomy at the moment are looking in detail about planets around nearby stars. Now, it was only in the 1990s that we first knew that there were planets other than our own planet around the sun. Planets were circling other stars. And in recent years, we've found thousands of them. I think the latest count is nearly 5,000 planets around many of the stars you can see probably around many of the stars you can see in the night sky. So what we need to do now is to look in more detail at these planets with the more sophisticated telescopes like those on Plato and with the James Webb Space Telescope that's just been launched.
Which I absolutely, and I loved Hubble and I love James Webb even more. But at the bottom of the screen in our conversation, folk at home will notice it says £25 million investment. We're both very excited about the prospects. Does 25 just buy us a place at the table, or is that a serious chip into the kitty?
It buys us a place in this mission. We are contributing to the building of this mission. It's not a great deal of money as far as these things are concerned. The James Webb Space Telescope cost $10 billion. So we're an important part of this mission. It's mainly an Italian-French mission. But because of our investment in it, we will have an important part in building it and in using it, because we have a tremendous community of astronomers who use such instruments like this, who bat way above their numbers in terms of world advancement of astronomy and science. So this is an important investment in, as we said, a very exciting mission.
And we've got a pretty good track record on this, haven't we? But particularly when it comes to, as we both put it, buying a place at the table, chipping in particular bits of expertise to particular bits of these complex multinational operations. We're good at that.
We are. We cannot afford to do many of these missions on our own. They are just too expensive. So cooperation is the name of the game. So if you go, we are involved in so many missions, from missions to the moon, to the planets, to observing the sun, missions that fly around the sun, to observing deep space, the stars, planets around nearby stars and distant galaxies. We are involved in so many of these missions. And even if we're not officially involved in this, you cannot go to any observatory or space agency in the world where you will not find a Brit involved. This is astronomy and space science, not only in universities, but in small companies, in investing in the technology needed to build these missions, is one of our shining abilities in science and technology that is recognized all over the world.
I love to hear that stuff, and a big round of applause, particularly for the universities as well, who played a blinder on vaccinations and what have you, to be doing this as well. Space travel, which has also now become the thing of headlines, even though it's becoming fairly regular. It seems to be a thing of billionaires these days. But this real scientific stuff that you're talking about and that you write so brilliantly about, that still depends on governments, and whether it's the United States and NASA or whether it's the European Space Agency and us chipping in. You can't get the real expensive scientific stuff done unless taxpayers dip into their pockets.
That's right. I mean, we've seen in the last 20 years billionaires such as Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk building their own rockets. SpaceX, Elon Musk's company, is a tremendous company. It changed the rules of the game, and its rockets, its Falcon rockets, its capsules to the space station, made governments look slow. But in terms of science missions, the billionaires haven't really turned their attention towards this. So there are a few billionaires who want to send missions to the nearby stars or fund a few science missions. But in general, you're quite right. It's governments, it's space agencies, it's the universities, and a lot of small companies.
David,
and this is good. This is good for everybody because it fertilizes.
Totally agree.
Industry.
Have to end it there. David, a real pleasure to talk to you. That's it from David, and indeed from me. Mark Dolan is up next, and I'll be back here at 12 o'clock tomorrow. Until then, a very good evening to you.
Hello. Fog and frost to start this weekend once again for many of us. Quite a lot of clouds then through the rest of the day on Saturday before it brightens up for many of us on Sunday. Now, high pressure has been with us for quite some time, still in charge of the weather at the moment, but we do have these weather fronts waiting in the wings, and they will start to influence our weather during the course of this weekend. But before then, fog and frost are the order of the day. Overnight tonight, reforming quite widely, particularly across parts of England and Wales. Central and eastern England particularly prone, I think, to some fairly dense fog patches tonight and into the start of the day tomorrow. And we do have a weather warning in force. Also, a frost forming fairly extensively once again, perhaps not quite as chilly